Howdy, folks. Happy Monday, and welcome to the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs. The 82-game preseason is over, and now we've got consequential hockey for the next, 2.5 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it should be interesting. We've had a lot of news today. Eck will be joining us momentarily. Some general managers saying that they're not coming back. I don't know if it was a firing or his contract was up in Calgary, so it was a resignation or a.
He just left. He just never came back.
Yeah,
they offered him a contract. He didn't want it.
Yeah, so that we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the 4 series starting tonight. We'll reveal our predictions. Although people who watch Off the Post already know our predictions, but we'll pretend.
I only did first round. That's all I'm doing here.
Oh yeah, no. I'm okay, I am not predicting the Stanley Cup playoffs because things change based on injuries. Come on. It's
doing first round. That's it.
Yeah, first round. That's it. No wagering. Because if you do, I'm not at fault for you losing your shirt. Anyway, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So let's talk about the bizarreness of the NFL. So on my way over to the final press conference for the Flyers this season from their management, coach and management, Jalen Hurts was signed to the biggest contract in the NFL, $51 million. So I then stated that it's too much. And then Charlie O'Connor turned to me and said, well, of course you think it's too much. You're a Mets and Jets fan. I'm like, it has nothing to do with the Eagles. I said, I dislike jerky Eagles fans, but I don't dislike anybody on the team. And obviously Anthony's an Eagles fan. I don't dislike all Eagles fans. I said, what I dislike is the way they're overpaying quarterbacks now because there are quarterbacks getting these contracts that don't deserve them. So I think Hurts is a good quarterback. I don't think he's great. Will he get to be great? I don't know. But now they're paying him like he's great. So here's the list of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of the top 9 quarterbacks, here are the ones that I think are worth the money right now.
Okay.
Josh Allen, $43 million.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes, $45 million.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers, $49 for past performance. I wouldn't pay him that now.
Not right. Yeah, that's exactly.
That's past performance. That's it. Those are the only 3. Jalen Hurts is not in that list. Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Matt Stafford, Dak Prescott. I wouldn't pay any of them that money. Now, of course, I would give Hurts a new contract.
Right.
But I would have paid him more Dak Prescott money than what he got.
Boy, is this going to embolden Lamar Jackson because.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is the thing.
That was the guaranteed part, though. He wants all guaranteed, and he's not going to get it. Obviously.
And Hurts didn't get all guaranteed.
He got $175 million guaranteed.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, do I like Jalen Hurts? Yes. Do I think he's a really good quarterback? Sure. I mean, I think he's a little limited passing-wise, but he's a fantastic runner.
Best offensive line, too. Let's not forget that.
Right. But this is the issue. I know that teams and general managers in the NFL, they can't think this way, but running quarterbacks get hurt more. They say, well, quarterbacks get hurt in the pocket. Well, they get hurt out of the pocket too if they take significant contact. And guys like Josh Allen, even though he's a 6'5" guy, when he only got hurt when he was in the pocket, but you take more of a risk when you're out of the pocket and you're taking hits out of bounds and you're taking hits, jumping over linebackers and whatever. So, I mean, that's the thing here. The concern here is a quarterback getting $51 million and him being primarily a running quarterback. And RG3, as Tony Soprano in the chat, RG3 got hurt his knee, played a playoff game, blew out his knee, and was never the same. So, that's risky.
Now, again, see, Andrew, I this isn't the going rate because
you guys hear me?
Hurts
you can't see me though, right?
We do see you.
You're frozen. You're frozen.
Okay.
But you sound fine. I'm gonna argue with Drew because it's not the going rate. He agrees that it's too much too soon, and that's the point. It can't be the going rate and too much too soon. Because, again, the Eagles needed to sign him. And again, he didn't need to be the top paid quarterback in the league. That's the issue here. And again, Hurts had no problem taking the money. And of course, that limits what the team can do. Now they'll redo this deal 4 or 5 times over the next few years. But what the Eagles can do this year is severely limited now based on his contract. And they made it to the Super Bowl last year. I can tell you they're not making it to the Super Bowl this year. And they know that. They actually know based on their contracts that they're not expecting to. But I'm just saying you've got 8 quarterbacks there, and I agree with 3 salaries. That's probably never happened with me in the NFL before, but that's the way it is now, and it's bad. That's all.
You're still frozen. Maybe log off and log back in. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, we know that the salary cap in the NFL is going to go up precipitously in the next, I think, year or two because they got new gambling money and new TV money coming in,
right?
Money from Amazon, but still, you're talking about quarterbacks taking up, I think it's like something like 1/6 or 1/7 of the cap.
Yeah,
that's going to have a trickle down effect, just like in the NHL where big star centers, they're making $9-10 million, $11 million. Connor McDavid making 12.5. Austin Matthews is probably going to make 13 or 14 on his new deal, and that on an $81 or $82 million cap, that's almost 20%. So, and those quarterbacks go down, that team is effed. They're screwed. Yeah. But anyway,
I mean, here's an example. So, if you believe in QBR, Jalen Hurts was 4th in the league. Okay. 4th is good, not the best. Who's second best? Pat Mahomes. Jalen Hurts lost to Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. The reason I told people to take Kansas City in the Super Bowl was I felt Pat Mahomes would outscore Jalen Hurts. That's going to be his battle the rest of his career, not necessarily with Patrick Mahomes, but with any of these quarterbacks. You've got to make sure you've got a quarterback that can throw six touchdowns a game or you don't give him that money. And I don't think he could throw 6 touchdowns a game.
No.
And I don't think Mahomes does it every game either, by the way. But he does.
That's working.
Not for anymore. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Can do it. And that's my point. I don't know how you feel about that, Eck, but the Eagles gave way too much money to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I just heard this. Yeah, I mean, you knew they were going to give a lot of money to him. So
sure, a lot would be like $45 million.
Yeah, I mean, he's beloved. I mean, I heard what Mike was saying briefly there too about the running quarterback, being susceptible to injuries.
Yeah,
but and that's always true. But he definitely has taken the town by storm. So they gave a lot to Carson Wentz. They figured out how to get rid of him. I don't know. Maybe this is just the way they do things.
Well,
I'm not saying it's right, but
Carson Wentz was an MVP until he got hurt, and then now he's a journeyman because he can't do it anymore.
But they got rid of him. So
right, but the thing is that unlike the NFL before the last 2 years, you could get rid of people because most of the contract wasn't guaranteed. Now these quarterbacks are getting more and more guaranteed money, and that means if you cut them, you still have to pay them, and
they have no move clauses too.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
Let's get going. It's big day, big day. The Hockey World is Monday, April 17th, tax day. No, I'm just kidding. Monday, April 17th, 2023.
Don't remind me. I'm Michael Agello, and I'll just say this. Computer viruses suck.
I was dealing with Mike's computer viruses.
I'm Russ Cohen, and that may be the most obvious statement anybody's ever made.
Thank you.
I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday. We have Kevin Allen's picks today. We don't have Kevin Allen. We'll have him tomorrow for sure. Well, we won't have Russ tomorrow, but we will be joined by another special guest tomorrow. And we'll have Russ's picks tomorrow as well. So remember, without the
okay, we're gonna sign off already.
Just stop here. Just thought I would stop right here. Quickest show ever. It'd be really fun. No, let's talk about. I mean, we're going to get into the 4 games tonight. I think it's where we got to go. We got a lot of cover in a very short period of time. I've been spending the morning watching the last time each of these teams played. That's usually what I do before making a prediction. Try to see if I can get any sense of it. From that, like what they're going to look like and what they're going to play like. And let's start with the big one right off the bat in Florida. Not the big one, but Florida and Boston. Boston Let's go to you, Russ. Why don't you go start this one off, Russ?
Sure. So I looked at this one and I, looked at what Florida did down the stretch and looked at maybe what Boston did or didn't do down the stretch, but still set the record. That they had no problem doing that. I look at the matchup down the middle at center. I look at just the overwhelmingly great defense of Boston, offensively and defensively. And then I look at now it's Alex Line so far against Linus Olmark. This is bad. I mean, to me, it looks like Boston in 5. If Alex Line plays out of his mind, maybe it's Boston in 6. But I don't see how Florida wins this one. There's always an upset. I get it. But I don't think these guys are getting upset in the first round. I just feel like they know what they're doing. They're a very loose team in the locker room. I've been in their locker room a fair amount of times, more than most teams this year, other than the Flyers. And they are very loose. They've got the right chemistry. And they have 2 good goalies. Like, even if Olmark stinks, they had Jeremy Swayman, who is clearly capable. So,
yeah,
I have a hard time pushing Florida in this one.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
So you had Boston in 5, Russ?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, the news, what's coming out today, might be a contributing factor in making this series a little longer because they're saying that flu is ravaging the Bruins' life. This somehow strikes me as like one of these, oh boy, they got the flu, we have a chance type of thing, like the sort of shell game that and the the disinformation type of stuff that happens before the playoffs. But I'll just say this: even if Patrice Bergeron is bedridden and he misses game 1, the Bruins are the better team. They're the deeper team. I think Florida is going to make it interesting. I think Matthew Tkachuk, the snot competition between Tkachuk and Brad Marchand is easily the best thing about this thing. I know that GIF on Twitter that Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live eating the popcorn. That's me. I'll be watching these games, eating the popcorn, just watching these 2 teams beat the crap out of each other, and they will do that. But Boston's a better team, and I think eventually Florida will go to from Lyon to Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
But I still think it'll be Boston in 6.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all we know right now is Lyon was the first off the ice today, right? We don't know.
He's going to start. We know that.
Well, it sounds like he's going to start. But I wouldn't put it out of my head because the GM and the coach there like to be tricky a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about this. No one's talking about this.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's always possible. I can't say no because we've seen things like that.
I think we're going to see Bobrovsky in the series. Yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, did they do? Alex Lyon has definitely won the hearts of the team. He really has. They believe got them into the playoffs. Like without Lyon, they don't make the playoffs, and he played really well. So I think he's getting to the one game, that you get if you do that. Like, you go, which we've seen before. We've seen teams do that before.
This is the Hamburglar. This is, he gets into the playoffs and he plays game 1 against Montreal and he loses, and then they go to Craig Anderson. Right,
exactly. 1 second, guys. Sorry, I'll be right back.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously Boston is the better team. They had the best record in history or whatever the hell it was. But I just think,
it's history, Mike. It is.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, but
it's definitely history.
I know they had 65.
The history of this planet, at least, that's the best hockey record we've ever seen.
I know they had 65 wins, but I'm saying, I know people who are talking about, well, there were no ties. There were ties.
It doesn't matter.
There were ties in 1977.
If there were ties now, they might have gotten more wins. So it's possible. Who knows?
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
The reality is, they're great now. The only thing that I wrote in my article today, the only thing they have going against them is the fact that they have been saying for months now how the regular season doesn't matter and that the playoffs matter. And I think when a team starts talking that way, that as early as they were talking that way, it just bothers me, to the point where, okay, the more you say the regular season doesn't matter and the playoffs are a whole new thing, the more you can sometimes believe it. Now, I think that there's enough experience in that locker room that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and I feel like
team, it doesn't matter.
My feeling is that, right? I love Florida starting line in the first game, and this year's why. because you're not supposed to win the series. First of all, you're not supposed to win the series. You're not even supposed to. And you're definitely not supposed to win game one. But what if you do with Lyon? Like, what if you do? And to go along with that, what if, if you lose, you just say, well, we gave Lyon a shot. Here comes Bob to say, like, gives game two like some hope because they want to win one of two games in Boston, obviously. So, this gives both games like a new hope. Like, if you get blown out, it doesn't matter. If you get blown out and Alex Lyon's your goalie, it doesn't matter if Bob's your goalie in game two. If you go to Bob in game one and then you got to go back to Alex Lyon in game two because you lost badly, I think that remember Bobrovsky's is psychologically an interesting character too. Like, he's not, we remember this. Like, I'm sure he's over all the stuff he was in. He loves playing in the playoffs now. He's been a great playoff goalie. But remember in Philly, he was afraid to play in the playoffs. Like, that was the whole thing. We actually came out that he was afraid one time they didn't play him because he was too nervous.
He was pretty good in Columbus against Tampa that year.
Right. And a lot of people pointing to like that Columbus team, which, with Bobrovsky led, that Tampa team, which was the third best record of all time. And, and Bill Zito was a member of both of those teams too. But, for what it's worth, it's just, you look at this, you look at the situation here. This is not a fun series for Boston to play because they're playing, the one thing I'll give Florida, and all year they were talking about how last year in the last several playoff series they went to, they found out that they couldn't play playoff style hockey well. Like, they could win one way in the regular season really well, but they couldn't win the playoff style hockey well. And they spent a lot of this year working on that, to the point of their own detriment at times, like to the point where they were so bad at it.
From the regular season for sure.
Now whether or not we've seen teams do that before and then be successful from it. The risk in that, of course, is you got to still make the playoffs, or else it really doesn't matter. And they just barely made the playoffs. Now, but they did make the playoffs, and I think that their thing is going to be like, okay, we are still the President's Trophy winner from last year. They're the President's Trophy winner from this year. We now know how to play the playoffs better. We've got nothing to lose. The whole world is picking them to win and probably win the Stanley Cup. So that being said, I'm still going with Boston in 7. But I do think it's going to be a series. I think it's going to be, and I do think that Boston will lose one of the first 2 games at home. I'll throw that out there too. I think that will happen. Now, whether or not that matters down the long run. But that was with the Tampa series. If you remember, the big thing was those first 2 games. Like, that's if Florida somehow wins those first 2 games, then Boston. Then it really gets crazy for Boston because
it does. But I can go back to 94, the way it worked out with the Rangers. You saw they lost games like that, and it didn't matter. They came back and won. And I just feel like Boston's like of that same ilk.
Yeah. I mean, it would probably be good for Boston, honestly, in the long run, for them to lose a couple games in the series. Like, it probably would be better for that team.
Yeah, I could see them losing 2, perhaps, but that's if everything goes right, like everything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that Florida doesn't have this year, which they really had last year, which has killed them in my opinion, is the guys like the March Months, like the characters who are scoring the big goals, and they're not supposed to score goal type guys. They're getting goals from the goal scorers, but they're not getting the goals from the extra guys out there who are just like, kind of like the good feel good guys on the team that when they score everybody's happy type thing. So anyway, I think this is obviously Boston's series to lose. So Mike, where do you want to go next?
Well, why don't we mix in some of the news and then intersperse that with the picks, because I don't think we should do the picks all in a row. I mean, there's a lot of news today.
Yeah, but I think I want to get to the picks and want to make sure we have enough time for them.
No, we will. I'm just saying.
All right, well, give us one news story then.
Well, Brad Treliving, the GM in Calgary, resigning. Don Maloney being named, I think it was VP of Hockey Operations and General Manager. We know that Don Maloney was a GM with the Arizona, I think it was Phoenix Coyotes when he was the GM. He was the AGM under Treliving. And Russ, I mean, okay, he has the experience, so going in there, I'm just wondering whether, Maloney being part of the staff is sort of like a sign that Daryl Sutter is staying, that they're going to sort of stay the course with what they're doing. And I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, all right. So the first thing is, it seems like Maloney's still going to pick a GM.
So he's going to be the VP, and then he'll appoint. Well, they said Craig Conroy might be a possibility.
Yeah, I would look to Conroy. I mean, I've interviewed with him 2-3 times. Super smart, knows what it takes to win, knows the players. Very contagiously, contagious with a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing here is now, though, that now Maloney is going to meet with Sutter tomorrow. So I don't know that Sutter is safe I just think Treliving probably got burnt out at the situation, thinking, well, I did everything I could this last offseason, and this season was still a disaster.
Well, they offered him an extension, and he didn't.
Yeah, but he knows that he knows that coming back, he's up against a worse potential to win than this past year. It's going to be harder. And so I think he looked at it and said, I did my best this last offseason. I need a break. Like, this was a pressure cooker. He probably also would like to see Sutter gone, and maybe had the feeling that he wasn't going to be gone. So he figured he would do the first move and be out of there. I think now there's a better chance that Sutter stays because he's gone. But again, I'm not sure either of these things are going to help them for next year. I look at them and know that they have bigger things to answer for, and they're not allowed to talk about a rebuild. It's already Julian McKenzie is already putting that on there. So John Bean, whoever he is, I guess, is he the owner?
Not sure. Flamester would know. Is John Bean the owner?
I think he's part of the group, isn't he?
He's part of the group. And he said, I'm not allowed to say the word rebuild. Like, there you go. You want to talk about an organization in denial, it is the Calgary Flames.
Okay, so is rebuild the hockey version of what we deemed in politics that no Democratic politician would utter the word liberal because liberal was right. I mean, I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with a rebuild. When your team sucks and you need to move things around and change the culture, it's a rebuild. There's nothing wrong. Now, maybe people whose job position is tenuous don't want to use that word because that means 3 or 4 years of losing, but that's the reality. Sometimes you have to do that.
Even the building there is tenuous based on the age and the fact that they haven't got a new building.
Mackenzie Weegar, in his end of season media availability, said, I think it'd be a good idea to hit a new building.
Yeah.
I mean, when the players are asking for it, then things are bad.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I hate this. I've officially waging war on the terms rebuild and retool. Like, I'm so tired of it because I just think I don't think they make any sense. I think that they carry really weird connotations with them. They aren't, as you're starting over, you're tearing it down. I think all this stuff is completely ridiculous. You can do what in rebuild almost implies we're going to make ourselves bad for a while and then we'll be good. I just don't that I think is a weird thing to say. Retool.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'll say this and then let you continue. Rebuild is accepting the fact that you are bad, and once you accept that fact, rebuild is putting you on the road to recovery.
Right.
Where Calgary is looking at it, where they're like, we have these players, we're not bad. We just need a couple of fits here and there, and we just need Markstrom to do better or get a new goalie, and then we'll be better. That's what they're. That's why it's.
See, here's the definition. If you're the Arizona Coyotes or you're the Chicago Blackhawks, and you've systematically dismantled your franchise over the last 2 or 3 years, then you're not rebuilding. You're sucking on purpose, and that's what they're doing. Chicago.
Right, so that's another term now.
That's my term. That's the Mike Agello definition.
But that's not a rebuild?
No. Now it's a rebuild because at a certain point they're going to actually try to start adding pieces and getting better. But this is part. That's tear down. That's tearing it down to the studs. That's not the rebuild is when they start building back up.
So it's listen, to me, how it's defined in the NHL is if you've got a couple players that are still good players and still considered in the prime of their career, you retool. If you don't have any of those guys, you rebuild. Right. So like that's how I feel like that's what I feel the definition is. People. That's why I think that when you look at the Calgary Flames, they've got Huberdeau, who's still a really great player.
And Kadri and
Lynn, and they've got players that are still like, whether or not Uyghurs are still. And they've got Markstrom. So no, they're not going to rebuild. They're
have 4 players. You've identified 4 players, and one of them having the worst year of his career in Huberdeau, and that's the reason you don't rebuild?
That's the reason you don't say you're rebuilding, because you're still building around those players. Like if you're building around some good players, you're retooling. If you're rebuilding, means you have nothing. I mean, isn't that the definition of it? So
They have something more than nothing, but it's in the end, the sum of the parts isn't enough.
It's not enough, but it's not. They're not rebuilding. Like that's why I hate these terms, because it's like rebuilding is literally what the Blackhawks are doing to me. Like they've gotten rid of Patrick Kane. Jonathan Toews is gone now. They've got one player on defense that they're keeping, who is a defenseman and not, he's a great player, but he's not like somebody you would say is like one of the best in the world type players. Yeah, I don't know. So I think, to me, I don't know. They're rebuilding. This retooling versus rebuild is ridiculous. Like the Rangers retooled a couple years ago, they didn't rebuild.
They'll continue to stink. That's the way we'll say it.
They'll still be. It doesn't mean you're going to retool into a champion. I mean, it's like it still takes time. But 99% of the teams in this league are retooling all the time. That's what they're doing. They're keeping their good players and they're trying to get better around them. That's retooling, right? I mean, so I don't know. To me, rebuilding is something that you do in desperate situations. I don't even think. I mean, that's when you want your team to tank. Also, Calgary's never been in a tanking situation. It's like they're not
capped out. They're in a bad cap situation. They paid Markstrom like he's a top 5 goalie in the league. He's not. At the time they did. He's just a little cheaper now. Yeah. They're getting the worst possible year out of Huberdeau. You already have Kadri complaining about Sutter, which who knows how that's going to work out.
Yeah, and that's the area. And they've got issues. I'm not saying they don't have
issues.
I'm not saying they don't have issues, Russ. I'm just saying, I mean, if you change the coach, maybe that does change a lot of things. Like maybe they have a very specific kind of coach that you either love or hate in Sutter, and that's like maybe they need a more non-specific type of coach that players can like rally around. I do think Sutter's gone. I think this is just a chance to get the GM, fire him, and let the GM bring in another coach.
Hey, listen, I just tell Flames fans, listen, just watch Edmonton. At least something's working in Alberta. That's all.
Right. There you go. So, all right. So let's go to Series 2.
At least for a couple games. They lose to the Kings.
Edmonton, LA. We'll start with Edmonton, LA. Mike, why don't you start?
Let Mike go first.
Okay.
Mike, you go.
All right. Well, I mean, the Edmonton Oilers have had a fantastic second half.
Best team in hockey.
Going with Stuart Skinner over Jack Campbell most of the time, and adding in the defenseman that I thought was the best defenseman for them to add, which was Matthias Ekholm, who sort of calmed everything down. The best forward in the league in Connor McDavid. Maybe, arguably one of the top 10 forwards in Leon Draisaitl. They're deeper than they have ever been.
Yeah.
But I still have some questions. And the LA Kings, without Drew Doughty, with a supposedly over-the-hill Jonathan Quick, got to Game 7 against Edmonton. They're better. They've got Fiala. They've got Doughty back. They've got Kopitar and Danault, who can possibly limit or shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. And they'll be physical. Now, Edmonton's got maybe enough pushback to contend with some of the heavier forwards on the Kings, but everybody seems to think that this is going to be a sweep, or it's going to be a 5-game thing because McDavid is so overpowering. But this is the thing: the Kings are going to try to get physical with McDavid. They did get physical with Draisaitl, and they injured Draisaitl in that first round last year, and that almost cost Edmonton a first round exit. So now, can you catch McDavid to be physical with him? Yeah, that's tough to do. But there are still some chinks in the armor when it comes to the Oilers, and I think the Kings, I think they would have rather played Seattle or rather played Vegas than played LA, because LA. No, that's just my opinion.
No, that's fine.
So I think everybody can see this coming a mile away. I'm picking the Kings in the upset in 7 games, and I am hoping for it. I am crossing my fingers and toes on it. And let
me just move this bag edge out of here, okay? So I'm just moving this over here.
Yeah. And I'll go next. I do want to say that I heard on the radio today, nobody should be rooting this series to go to 7. If it goes to 6, there's going to be a 3-day off rest for the Kings, because the Clippers and the Lakers had the building. So it'll be 3 days in between 5 and 6.
Oh, man.
So nobody's rooting for that. We'll start with that. Anyhow.
That's brutal.
Moving on, I'm glad Mike is a huge Eunice Corpusalo fan with all the playoffs that he's played in his life. He's got a massive list there. That's
Can we go back to some
Mike
talking about Corpusalo?
5 overtimes against Tampa.
I know that was me saying those things.
20, nothing like the present.
You were not in that corner. That was me saying those things about Corpusalo. I believed in Corpusalo.
Yeah, and then he got hurt.
Fine. So there's that. Edmonton probably has the best top 6 in the league. We'll go there, especially with the year Nugent Hopkins is having. Their defense is solidified to the point where it hasn't been before. If you want to say Jack Campbell's the backup, that's fine, but they have 2 capable goalies. So I've watched enough LA to tell you that their defense is too loose. And while Corpusalo is a guy that can make a lot of saves, the offensive onslaught is going to be tremendous in this. Now, I'm not telling you Edmonton's going to win every game 7-1, but I'm telling you Corpusalo is going to get the workout that he can't keep up with in this series. The Kings can't clamp down on defense. They can't hold on to a lead. Yeah. That is going to kill them. Even if Edmonton's down 3 goals in any of these games, they're going to feel like they're in it. So I have to take what did I take them in? Edmonton, and I'm looking at my list because I'm trying to stay consistent here. 5.
5, yeah.
Edmonton 5. Okay, so yes, Mike, they took him to 7 games last year, but that was both these teams are very different than both those teams were. And both are better. Both are better. So I think, and I think LA's better than that team was. I mean, they have Doughty back, obviously that helps. But the reality was Quick was unbelievable in that series too. And, and he's an playoff experienced goalie who has, and I like Corpusalo. And I've told you, I would have taken this chance too. I thought they made a brilliant trade there. And I thought there was I would have tried to do it without moving Jonathan Quick, but still it was a brilliant trade. I know they couldn't because of the way the world works with cap stuff and all that stuff. To me, the biggest thing between last year's series is that, is that both of these goaltenders on the Oilers would have started over anybody they had last year in a heartbeat.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's in that series, and as good as Mike, what's the one goalie was?
Mike Smith. You had Mike Smith, and then the Civ.
Right. I mean, as good as Mike Smith was at times, Mike Smith still was playing dangerous, scary hockey back there, which made the defense which made the defense scatterbrained, and it gave Edmonton. It definitely caused Edmonton a lot of problems on their outbreaks. They were just nervous about things he was doing. And they were, and then he also gave up goals some bad goals at bad times. He made some great saves too, but he it's about key saves at key times in the playoffs, and he wasn't there in the LA series. LA scored a couple goals that they just never should have scored, and that made that series go longer than it did. There's no question that Edmonton's maybe the best team in the West, as good as any team, and maybe only behind Boston in the East. We'll see how that plays out. There's, but both goalies are solid. I don't care which goalie they play; it doesn't really matter. I think Skinner will start. I think Campbell may end up finishing it because Campbell, I think, at the end of the day, is playoffs has shown that he can do something, and has shown in pressure situations going way back to the USA World Juniors that he's good at pressure goalies. Pressure goalie. So I'm going to say Campbell's going to be the goalie who eventually, if this team wins a cup, it'll be with Campbell. But I think Skinner will be probably the starter in this series, and I don't think it matters.
They're not winning the cup.
I don't think it matters for this series. I think if Campbell or Skinner is the goalie, I think this is 5 or 6. I mean, I guess I'm going to say 5. I'm going to say 5 in this one, but it's possible. LA could take it longer. The Buzztron has it going to 7, so I don't know. Anything's possible. We'll see.
Anthony had Edmonton in 5 as well. And I think he had Boston in 6.
Yeah, let's get Kevin's out there too. I got this. Hold on.
You're on your own island, Mike.
What's that?
You're on your own island with that.
All right, so
where I want to be, baby.
All right, Kevin had Boston in 6, and he has Edmonton in 6 as well. So
yeah, Kevin doesn't know anything.
Now I wanted to do, as we were going, I forgot. I wanted to do, as always, the predictions from my son because this is a tradition. So that's just based on the mascots and who's better. Here you're talking about the Oilers and the Kings. And this was a little bit of a tougher one because basically, one's a monarch, one's made their money out of oiling. He said he'd rather go with the people who rather go with the king because they, tended to be like had a bigger army. So he actually went with LA in this.
Right.
And then, of course, in the first series, we talked about the Panthers and Bears. There's no question that a Bruin is going to destroy a Panther every day of the week. All right, so let's go to one more series here because we are at 4-11.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to which one should we go to next? Let's go to the Islanders, Carolina. I'll start with this one. First of all, this is my favorite for my sons because, like I said before, the hurricanes are the natural enemy to islands everywhere. So this is hurricanes destroy islands all the time. So the Hurricanes are no question on this one. But I actually think that I'm almost not that far off from my son in this one. I think this is a no-brainer with I have the Canes in 5, and here's why. I think that as good as the Islanders have been at times, as great as Sorokin is, you guys know I'm a Sorokin fan all the way through. This is one of the best defenses versus one of the worst offenses. And you can't get around. I can't get around that. Now, the Islanders. The big thing they have with Sorokin is when you're going against a goalie like Sorokin, you feel like you have to take some more chances because you need more opportunities to score. And then when you take more chances and more opportunities to score, Carolina could leave themselves open to some breaks the other way, which is what that's how you play into the Islanders game, and that's how the Islanders win games. However, the Islanders also win games by scoring first. We've talked about this many times. The best team in the first period in the NHL this year is the Carolina Hurricanes at a +31 goal differential. They score first all the time. And if Canes continue to score first on the Islanders, then when the Islanders have to open it up, the Canes will eat them alive. I think because you just can't do that. Now, I'm a little surprised by Raanta starting. I have to say. I mean, this is a pretty big shock.
They must be looking at some advanced numbers that they feel are better, and that's fine. Whatever.
Well, he's been ridiculous in like the last. I think it's like
he's had some good starts the last couple.
Last 17 games, he's something like 16-1 or something like that. There's a ridiculous number out there.
Okay.
But I think the goalie that should be playing for them is not even on their bench.
Yeah, we all think that, but he's not quite there yet. By the way, State of Survival is right. Islanders versus Carolina prediction: Sebastian Aho will make it to the second round. He's right about that.
Yeah. I think
that's a guarantee that it's us, Sebastian Aho.
Sebastian Aho will make it to the second round.
No, but
it's always fun to see the universes collide. But yeah, I think that this is Brind'Amour is smart. Brind'Amour plays. He's going to play patient. This is going to be really low scoring. It's going to be a little bit painful to watch at times, I believe, because it's going to be, Brind'Amour's not going to bite on this, like, we got to take 1,000 chances to score on Sorokin, because actually, if you really look at Sorokin's numbers, he's one of those goalies that the more shots he has against him, the better he is. Yeah. So you might want to stay away. You don't have to like pound them. Just let the opportunities and chances come, and you'll beat them. I think. I mean, Sorokin could always steal the series. He's the best. So him and Shesterkin are the two best. I don't know who's better. But to me, it's
Vasilevsky too. They're all part of that top 5.
I think those two have kind of moved past Vasilevsky a little bit. Like
I can't say that yet. I can't.
It's hard to say that because of the experience, but when you watch them play, Vasilevsky has struggled a lot more than those two.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens this playoffs. All right, so I was actually on Queen City News this morning in Charlotte. Thanks for having me on. And they didn't know how I was going to break this down or who I was going for. They have a lot of worry there because there's not a lot of winning going on in Carolina.
They haven't been good
with their other teams, like the Panthers.
And the Canes haven't been good.
No, and and they keep getting eliminated early too. So the one stat that I helped them with a little bit was Sorokin lifetime is 2-4 against Carolina with a 2.88 goals against. If you do the quick math, the Islanders are not good for 2.88 goals. Right. So now, granted, this is the playoffs, but that's starters. Yeah. I do think Brent Burns is a difference maker. I noticed that Carolina this whole year has been activating their defensemen more, and they all have a lot of goals. Shea's got a career high of like 18. Burns has like 14.
For sure.
So, and even Gostisbehere, if you want to put him on the power play, even though he's not scoring at a rate that you'd like, he still has the shot, right? So, and their power play stinks. Like that's something that I think they're going to have to use Gostisbehere because it stinks. But their PK is second in the league. That's not going to change. Their defense, like X said, is so good and can clamp down. It's not going to change. Kotkaniemi's having a career year, and he 22 looks like a lot better for them that they maybe made the right decision with him. Seth Jarvis is a goal scorer by nature. He hasn't really put it all together yet, but he's young. You never know what he might do in these playoffs. I like the fact that they have Paul Stastny as like a fourth line center because he has a lot of experience.
And he's like a coach, Russ. He's like
a coach out there, so that's good. I do think it's going to be low scoring. And look, I think it will come down to the Islanders, how much their defense can score, because they're going to have 2 or 3 guys, the usual suspects, that will get goals. Lee will get goals. Nelson will get goals. Barzell will probably get 1 or 2, but he's really not a goal scorer. He's more of a playmaker. And maybe Palmieri, if he stays hot, will get a little bit. But they don't have a lot of goal scoring you can count on. So end of the day, I'm still going Carolina in 7. And I'm going in 7 because of Sorokin. And but I do think they're going to edge them out. And I do think it's one of those series, like you said, where Brind'Amour is just going to kind of systematically work it. But I think Burns is the difference maker for Carolina.
Anthony had Carolina in 7. Kevin had the Islanders in 6.
Okay.
That is a surprising call from Kevin, and I really want to talk to him about that one. But
yeah,
we'll talk. I mean, we can talk about
tomorrow about that one for sure.
But here's the thing: this is easily the most boring of the 8 first round matches. The Islanders can't score, and the Carolina Hurricanes aren't exactly the 84 Edmonton Oilers. They're better scoring than the Islanders, but they're not by leaps and bounds. And I think that the Islanders will extend this series to 7 games because Sorokin will steal games. You're going to have a couple 2-1, 1-0 games in here, and he'll frustrate Carolina. But in the end, Carolina, their defense is better. Their forwards are just enough better. The only thing that might kill them is if their goaltending is average and they give up a couple bad ones, then that could swing the series. But I think Carolina in the end will win it, and I said Carolina in 7.
Yeah, I think their goaltending just needs to be average. I do worry about Sebastian Aho not living up to his abilities in the playoffs. He's been kind of, okay, but not great. And listen, Martin Necas, Mike and I loved him in his draft year. It took him a little while to develop. He was their top scorer this year. So
I heard someone say about him, and it was really appropriate, that he used to be the secret weapon for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he's not anymore.
Because what it was.
It's very true, I think.
It was true. He was playing down in the lineup, and with the kind of shot that he has and the hands that he has, would be out there in surprise situations. Now he's not. Right now he's a top liner. So yeah.
I also would throw one thing before we go in the little news thing here. And I know it's not probably.
Yeah.
But if you get a chance, you got to watch the USA Canada women's final, which was last night.
Yeah, big win.
It was great, and it's Hillary Knight, who is friend of the shows, friend of Hockey Buzzes. I've talked to her, interviewed her. You've interviewed her, I know.
I've interviewed her 3 times. She's great.
I've interviewed her twice, I guess, but and I text back and forth with her. She's a great person. Better, she is like, if they could have a GM, or she's like the Gary Bettman of women's hockey, if they could ever go that way, I think she would be the best person to run that league. And she's older, as everybody knows. She puts up a hat trick last night in that game.
100 points career.
It's crazy. I mean, it's definitely worth watching. I mean, there's such a great thing that goes on when those 2 teams play each other.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if the U.S. could do that in the Olympics.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, sure, the Olympics are a bigger stage for us. But for these teams, it doesn't matter if they're playing in Hoboken on a Thursday or.
If there's a trophy at stake, it means something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you want to see that. These guys are, and it was just it was such a great game, and just the most amazing thing about that game, Russ, when you're watching it is, and I talked to Karen about the game. I was watching the game the other day, giving her. She was at Karen Hames, she was in Montreal watching the Canadiens game, and I was giving her up
that room too right now
on the Canada Sweden game. And whenever they go to the crowd, yeah, it's real. And you know what? I've heard them cursing at each other across the hall. When I was in Vancouver at the Olympics, and the words coming out of their mouths.
Please,
I was just like, this is Canada in the U.S. They're like, they have rooms across. Oh my gosh, it was. I mean, there's hatred beyond belief there, and yet they're really good friends when they're done. But when they get ready to play. Oof. But anyway, I was talking when they pan to the audience. In a game, he's always like, a bunch of guys or a couple girls yelling, whatever. In this, it was a bunch of girls in their girl hockey jerseys for the teams they play in. Every time I went there, screaming their heads off. And one held up, the name of one of the players on Team Canada. I wish I remember which one it was. Who said, so and so is my team's coach. You know, like she's the coach of their youth hockey team.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm just like, and every time they go, I'm like, this is so. There's no other sport. Like you took baseball, football, basketball, where you'd see that, where you see anything like that. Maybe basketball, maybe, but I think it feels like
basketball would be the next closest. I feel like it's a stronger connection in hockey. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm biased, but it feels like
maybe I'm biased too. But maybe it's just the amount of people like that are playing women's hockey versus women's basketball, which is a lot of people playing women's basketball.
I'll tell you what skews it. You know what really does skew it? For basketball, we're really just looking at the U.S.
Yeah.
We're looking at two nations for hockey, and I think that does matter.
It really does matter. And it's just it was so unbelievably energizing to me, who like I was a coach for my daughter from her girls soccer from 5 till she was 16. And just being around women, like girls sports and stuff like that, and knowing how amazingly intense and how much fun it is to see that that's happening in hockey. And to that level where like these girls were all there, you know, and you'll see the women's World Cup of soccer is coming up this summer too. It's the same kind of thing, but
same kind of thing.
But this is like those are maybe the closest things we have, I think, to like that kind of thing. But there's just I guess there's not like a women's basketball rivalry like this, where you go to see a game like this because the game was in Ontario.
Like Olympic basketball for women's doesn't seem to have the same gravitas as hockey. I don't know why. I mean, the US WNBA, but it just doesn't.
Because you know, this has the classic hockey U.S. versus Canada thing, which is like that's classic. That's just hockey in general.
We know the U.S. is better than Canada. Even Corinne knows, and that makes sense.
Right, and they always have been and always will be. I mean, you've got 1/10 of people in Canada. Right. You know, we have way better healthcare, as I've learned this year. So it's like the whole thing is complete. Let's move on. Let's go to the final game of tonight.
Well, hold on. Before the final game, I have one quick newsy thing. So Kevin Weeks puts on tomorrow's news for an announcement regarding a forthcoming arena development project in Georgia large enough to house a hockey team. If you build it, they will come. And they put, you know, all the different hashtags, and he shows where in Atlanta it is, and it kind of meets where all the highways, or I should say, the two highways for Atlanta all converge in that place, right? So the first thing is I say, well, you know, and I saw a number for the Gladiators, which are now the Atlanta Gladiators, and maybe that was just a one-night thing, but they averaged a little over 5,000 this year. For ECHL, hey, that's great, right? And I'm like, but that doesn't fill an NHL arena. So then, of course, I start getting the argument from, you know, the NHL to Atlanta. Like all of a sudden they're on my case. And it's like, well, you know, they had an 8,000 night attendance for the Thrashers night. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But that's one night. You got to sell 40 nights and you have to sell at the arena. And I said, no owner wants a slow build. They want an instant audience like they got in Seattle. And Atlanta's got horrible traffic. I just don't see this.
Failed once, failed twice. It is the worst sports town in the United States. Ask people who are Braves fans. They stopped going even though the team was winning friggin' championships every year. You know, if you're talking about, you know, how people are driven nuts by the NHL staying in Arizona, going back to Atlanta for the third time, a triple dip of loserdom, give me a friggin' break. Go to a town that hasn't had, like the talk about Salt Lake City or Portland or Milwaukee or Kansas City or Charlotte. I'd take any of those over Atlanta for a third time. And so I'm sorry, Quebec City, they built a building because the NHL said, if you build it, we will come. Yeah. When? Well,
the guy got out of that by Quebec turning it down at first, but then the idea, you know, because I've talked to people about that, I know because Bettman and the NHL don't make promises they don't keep, and that's the truth. But the reality is that they said, you know, they were willing to go there, but the economy was so bad in Canada by the time that happened that they said, no, can we get a couple of years to do this? It's kind of no better in Canada. It's a little bit better, but, you know, I still realize that when I pay my Canadian writers, they're getting a lot more money every day, you know, from the same amount of money I'm giving them. So in Canada. So it's definitely, the economy's still not there for them, right?
75 cents to the US dollar.
And remember that every player in the NHL, regardless of where they play, get paid in US dollars.
Correct.
So they're not charging Canadian fans. Right. They don't charge Canadian fans US dollars to come to games in Canada. They charge them Canadian dollars. So they're paying.
But the ticket, okay, the ticket prices in Toronto and the ticket prices in Montreal account for
Yeah, they do. And I have a good friend who has citizenship in both places, and he says in general, the reality is that the prices are just. It's not like you're making more. You go for the U.S. money, and it's just like things are just more expensive. It all basically works. It's not like it used to be where you could go up there and get like a Sony DVD player or whatever for less money because you had American money. It's pretty much taken into account, especially in the big cities, really close by, right, close to the border. But I think in Winnipeg and Edmonton, places like that, it's different than like it is in Toronto and Montreal, because Toronto and Montreal are, way more. I'm not let's say American, but they're way more North American-ish type cities. Where you get up in Edmonton and Montreal, they're making Canadian money. They're getting paid.
There's just more commerce.
Yeah, they're getting, but to an Edmonton fan or a Winnipeg fan, it's tougher. I want to see a team in Quebec desperately. I do. That's something I want to see before. I want to see the Quebec Nordiques return. I want to see that jersey in all of its glory return.
Yeah, we hope the dollar has to be like within 10 cents, I think.
It's got to get closer. Yeah, it's got to get closer. And I think it will eventually. And I do think we'll have a team there eventually. But, there's also what people don't talk about is how many times people have made an effort to put a team in Markham, which is like an hour north of Toronto, right?
Yep.
And that's a city where people believe that they could house an NHL team very easily.
There will never be a second Toronto team. Never. It will never ever happen.
Well, they thought when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved, right, that they think there'd be another New York team.
Well, I know, but I'm sorry. Like there was a history like in New York of there being more than one team going back to the New York Americans in the early.
Yeah, I know.
So having the Islanders and the Rangers, that wasn't
Wasn't there a second Toronto team briefly in the NHL?
Nope.
No, there wasn't. Okay. There's a second Montreal team, right? There's a second Montreal team.
There was a WHA team, the Toros, but there was
the Montreal Maroons, right, for a while.
Once the Americans and the Rangers shared MSG as a building, that ended quickly.
Yes.
for the Americans.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, they maybe have the best jersey ever created in hockey. It's really great.
It's amazing. It's and the away both home and away Quebec Nordiques jerseys are just phenomenal.
Not the Americans.
I thought you were talking about that. The Rochester Americans are very good jerseys. Yes, they are.
The Americans having a great jersey. Look it up.
Yeah, and the Rochester Americans used like a facsimile of that a couple of years back, as a second jersey. But they just, the Hamilton thing with Balsley would have been a mistake, because in between Buffalo and Toronto. Yeah. The Markham thing would have been a mistake. We have Graham Rouston, who's the owner of the Hockey News, who's now in the bidding for one of the many groups that is in the bidding for the Ottawa Senators.
Right.
So he may get in on that, but I just know it's never going to happen. They keep talking about Atlanta, and Houston is a possibility. I think Houston would make a lot of sense. Atlanta is just absolutely dumb.
So we got to move on. But I'll say the one thing. The only thing I ever heard that I heard this from at the time, Jim Basili, who I was talking to during that whole craziness,
right?
Directly, and he said that the proposal he went to, which I actually really liked, and I remember talking about this late ages ago. You'll remember it, Mike. Was that they would build a 35,000 seat hockey arena in Toronto. That would be the biggest hockey arena ever built, but it would be like and they would be shared by 2 NHL teams. And that's how the Leafs would allow it to happen, because they would get a free building with way more revenue all of a sudden, and those 2 teams now would have would share that. But I thought that was a fascinating concept.
Yeah, but the problem is that demand would go down then.
Yeah, but you could have like cheaper price. You could bring in lower price tickets, which would bring a lot of people in.
You could have lower price sections. I guess they would do.
Yeah, you have lower price sections, and the demand for the Maple Leafs is never. It's amazing. It never goes down, really.
Here's one bit of breaking news, then we'll do the last game.
Yeah.
So Rebecca Sanders wrote something, or at least tweeted something. I can't get behind the paywall of the ArizonaCentral.com. The Grand Canyon Institute found that for every $2.70 of the new tax revenue Tempe puts into the city, the project will generate just $1 for the city.
Keep digging, folks.
This vote's not going to go well, Ek. I just want to tell you right now, this vote ain't going well.
Keep digging, and the Grand Canyon together, Mike, are a good combination. I like that. You got to
find that body from the
use that as a headline somehow. You got to find a headline for that. All right, let's go to the final game, and this is the battle of the Minnesota North Stars versus the Minnesota Wild, which I really like. I mean, this is a really fascinating. I don't think these teams have ever played in the playoffs. And if I remember right, I don't remember. So this is the old Minnesota team. This is like
now. Will the Wild, as a troll job, wear the Minnesota?
Oh, they should.
The North Star. See, the problem is that the colors would be too similar, and they wouldn't be able to do it. But
no, that wouldn't be too similar. I mean, God, you're playing in the blue-white bowl up there in Toronto, Tampa. I mean, it's like the colors. I mean, I think the colors would be fine. Like, obviously one's dark.
I think that would be cool. I mean, that would be a nice troll.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating series. Who hasn't started? I guess.
I'll start.
You want to start this one? Mike, go for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, okay. The Wild have a lot of good things about them. Kaprizov being.
I have a little bit of a breaking news. I'm sorry, real quickly here. The Caps have parted ways with their assistant coaches, just for what it's worth. Just
yeah, no.
Kevin McCarthy, Blaine Forsythe.
Yeah, that's gonna be a clean sweep.
But go ahead, Mike. Continue.
So the Wild, have had a lot of good things this year. I mean, Matt Boldy sort of making progress and jumping into being a dominant, power forward in the league. Kaprizov having a great year, but the injury to Kaprizov, I think, puts a lot of things in question. The Eriksson Ek injury, and apparently he's skating, but I can't imagine that he's going to be anywhere close to 100% he'll play. Dallas, in my mind, like I have Dallas coming out of the West. Now we're going round by round here, but I think Dallas is the team that likely makes it through the Stanley Cup final. I love Ottinger. He's had a really good year after having a great playoff last year in the first round. They have Jason Robertson, who's had an unbelievable year, and they're deep. It's not just one line. You've got Sagan and Ben basically being veteran support forwards now. It's sort of moved to Rupe Hintz and Heiskanen and Robertson. So and they have the veteran support guys like Suter and Sagan and Ben. So I like the Stars a lot. I think they're better. I think they have the better goaltender because Fleury, he's a Hall of Famer, but he's not the goalie he was 2 or 3 years ago. I have Dallas in 6.
Russ?
Okay. I mean, first off, let's say that most will agree that Dallas is overrated in a lot of things. The barbecue is overrated compared to North Carolina. The Cowboys are way overrated compared to really almost any other team in the NFL.
You got to stop it here.
Have you had North Carolina barbecue?
I have not had Carolina barbecue. But no. But the thing is, Carolina barbecue is vinegar-based barbecue sauce. And I'm sorry, we both went to the Pecan Lodge. Are you telling me that wasn't the best barbecue?
Yes, you have a lifetime hatred against vinegar. You don't count in this vote.
I count in every vote. I count in every vote.
Anyhow.
You catch more flies with, Mike. But continue.
I do think that in this series, Jake Ottinger is a difference maker for sure. And I am worried about Kaprizov, how good he'll be and how often he'll even play.
Yeah.
So between that and Fleury being a little older, Dallas with Jason Robertson. Jason Robertson's a stud. Pavelski is pushing time into the distance, man. He's having unbelievable years that I didn't think he could have. Heiskanen is having a career year.
Yeah.
Everything's been right. They made the move to get Lundqvist. That was smart. That plugged a hole for them that they needed to. So everything's rolling right for Dallas in this. I'm going to go Dallas in 6. And that's not to say I don't appreciate the Wild, what they've done. Yeah. If you think about what Bill Guerin has done, everybody predicted the dead cap year would be the death of the Wild, and it's been anything but that.
That's true. Very good point.
Let's see. Anthony had
good.
Carolina has better wings than Buffalo. That's a tough one, OSU.
I'm with Russ on the Carolina barbecue.
Thank you.
Anthony had Dallas in 7, and so did Kevin.
Okay.
Just to tell Tony Soprano, Wyatt Johnston is on both Mike's and my Calder list.
Yes.
As a nominee.
Wyatt Johnston is the best name ever for a Dallas sports player. For a sports player from Dallas, Wyatt Johnston is incredible. It just feels like Wyatt Earp. It feels like This is a Texan.
Billy Joe Dupree.
Billy Joe Dupree's hard to the top. That was,
Wyatt Johnson's right there, though.
Wyatt Johnson's good though because he has that sheriffy sound.
Yeah, like Wyatt Earp. Like it's just like it's Wyatt. Wyatt
Earp. Yeah, there you go.
Anyways, here we go. This is one of those series. Every year, I always say there's one series that everybody is thinking that there's no way a team could lose, and they lose. And that's why I'm actually going with the Wild in this series. This is I picked what this is the one series that I think
doing it, or the Buzztron's doing it.
The Buzztron actually went with Dallas.
Okay, all right.
But no, I'm going against the Buzztron on a lot of picks here. Here's the thing. Minnesota
smarter than the Buzztron?
What?
Are you saying you're smarter than the algorithm?
No. I'm saying that people should like the Buzztron because it's better than me. And they don't like me. So anyway, here we go. So the Wild have just never go into a playoffs healthy. It's like an amazing thing. Like this team has the worst luck going into playoffs always. It's just, and I've followed them for years. They just usually it's goaltending. Usually they have a Kirk goalie or whatever. But this year, obviously their best player being hurt is a huge problem. And whether do we know how much he's going to play, or is he going to play, or what's happening with him yet?
With who?
With with yeah.
Well, Michael Cohen said he played and he looked okay against the Jets. I don't know how many minutes he played, but
right.
That doesn't mean he won't. Oh, Lundqvist is hurt. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
What? Who's hurt? Lundqvist is hurt.
Lundqvist is actually hurt. Right. All right, but no, I didn't. I don't know.
If he's healthy, he's a big difference.
I don't think he's 100%.
He's not 100%, but even he is, like in my opinion, the best player in the league. Well, he's right there with McDavid as far as skating and stick handling at high speeds. At high speeds, those two are.
Yeah, I agree with the high speed.
High speed game. I'm not saying he's the best player in the league, but all right. So listen, and the goaltending. I mean, Fleury is always an X factor that you just cannot predict. Last year he wasn't good in the playoffs, but he has a tendency to be good in the playoffs. Dallas, Ottinger was amazing in the playoffs last year. But here's the thing about Ottinger. I watched these two teams play their last game, and it was a 2-1 Minnesota win. And I think this is very similar to how the series could go. They played 3 times this year, 4-1. Their first 2 were 4-1 Dallas wins. The last one was 2-1 Minnesota. So the Stars scored a total of that's like 4 goals in 3 games against the Stars. Wild did 4 goals in 3 games. That's not good, obviously. Ottinger was great in that game too, and he's great all the time. But when you're going to beat a goalie like Ottinger, you have a better chance of doing it with the kind of goals that Minnesota scores and the kind of goals that Calgary scores, if that makes any sense. Calgary last year, was a much more skilled team. The Wild throw everything at the net. And Ottinger's, that's the kind of goals you're going to have to score. When you try to beat Price or Brodeur or anybody like that, you have to throw pucks at the net. Timeout, Mike. Go ahead.
Good cliche.
No,
that's not
the indications are that Philip Gustafson is starting game 1 for the Wild.
All right. So they're doing that.
That's okay, because again, this is the same kind. This is not that different than what you're looking at, because he got them there. This is very similar to what you're looking at.
No, he did, and that's fine.
In Florida, this is the same kind of thing that the Florida Panthers are doing, except this is a team that actually could go somewhere in Minnesota. You would think that. I mean, they are a good team.
I mean, look, it's better to bring in Fleury in relief,
right?
Pull him, because the minute you pull him, it's over.
I think that's exactly what's happening here, and so I'm okay with that. It's a pretty good move. I think it's a pretty good move. But at the end of the day, it'll be Fleury if they win it. And if I do think that, like, if they win the series, it's not going to be Gustafson.
Nothing against Gustafson. I think he's a good goalie, but
nothing against him at all. In fact, he is absolutely the reason they're in the playoffs. So, even more so than Lyon. I mean, so not playoffs, but the reason that they're not a wild card team. I'll say that. So anyway, it's not a bad move. Dallas has so much going for it. I mean, they have so many great young players. They've got a great elderly squad of people.
But yet you're picking Minnesota.
They got everything going for him. Everything in the world going for him.
I think Paul Simon got it right. Eck is picking against the Buzztron so that either way he wins. I think he's right.
Damn, you got me.
We know the Buzztron took the Islanders. We know it.
No, Buzztron did not take the Islanders. No, the Buzztron did not take the Islanders, did it?
I don't know. You tell me.
I got to go back and look at it. I'll look at it again. All right. So, but no, I'm going with the Wild. So as far as my son's 2 picks on these last 2, which I didn't do. So the Wild and the Stars. This is a really hard one for him. He's like, what is this? This is
Yeah, the Wild. You don't know what the Wild is.
Well, and the stars are just the universe. So he said, I guess the universe is bigger than the Earth. So we're gonna go with the universe over the Earth.
Yeah, because the Wild is just the wilderness. So the universe is way bigger than the wilderness.
Right. So I think that's where that's at. So yeah, I think that that's where I'm going to go with it. Let's see. So what were you? Oh, you want to do? I'll look at the Buzztron real quickly because they do have that right here. And Buzztron, by the way,
if we do have 2 minutes, Zach, I was at the closing session for the Flyers. There are some thoughts if you want to hear.
Go for that. Perfect.
So first thought is, I asked Danny Briere, since he mentioned scouting, would there be any other changes in the scouting department? Maybe get a voice at the table? No changes in scouting whatsoever. And I'm going to just be the first to tell you that I have mixed feelings about the way they've scouted. So
yeah, I know.
Also asked him about adding multiple picks for this draft, but he sort of perceived that as trading the first pick for multiple picks, which wasn't what I was getting at. What I was getting at was more like, are you going to try and replace that second round pick, or at least do something to get a second round pick in this draft? And he basically said that, he's going to look at stuff, but they're pretty sure they're going to be where they're going to be, and they're going to take that first pick. So that's fine to say that anyhow. At least fans kind of know that. The worry of this whole process, Eck, is that John, at some point during his conference, said, yeah, Danny and I, we have looked at things and we agree on things and whatever. And it's like, the problem with the Flyers now is you've got John and Danny agreeing to everything, and now you're bringing in somebody else. Even if it's somebody else on the inside, how could that person possibly have a differing view when you've got these two in lockstep already before you even get hired? That's not
some stuff I've heard behind the scenes a little bit about that, Russ. I think they're sugarcoating that a lot.
Well, they could be, but the idea is this is all we have to go by.
I know
what they say.
There's no way that they're in lockstep and barrel there. There's no way.
No, I mean, I get it. There's always going to be, and Danny did say like on a couple of things, they're definitely going to have discussions. But in the end, John made it seem like, hey, we're good here. And just the idea that 2/3 of whatever your management is going to be is already sort of set in stone is a little bit of a worry for me.
No, yeah. I don't disagree with that at all.
And then just something we haven't discussed on the show, but John brought it up at the very end. He defended the medical team because Cam Atkinson came out, talked about the misdiagnosis. And look, we have all worked in corporate entities, and the corporate entity is always going to try and defend itself, and get ahead of it if they can, and tell you that it's going to be better. But I will tell you the shocking thing about the Cam Atkinson part was that he went with the old surgery, and he went with the neck fusion rather than going with the artificial disc like Farabee and Eichel did.
Yeah.
Mike was surprised. I told him, you don't get – I mean, in the past at least, you don't get the best results from that as far as getting your player back near his game.
Yeah, so, and you also have a longer-term problems too. That's really surprising he did that. I don't know why he was
very surprising he did that. And so that was a little bit of a concern. So those were the big takeaways. I honestly think they should have brought somebody else in. Here's the irony of it. When 2 years ago, now it's 2 years ago, who did the Flyers bring in as the extra voice at the draft table? Danny Briere.
Yeah.
Now Danny Briere's in charge. Who's he going to bring in as the extra voice in the draft table? Nobody.
He's going to bring in me, Russ. I'm going to be
right. Or maybe the guy from Entourage, Kevin Connolly. Maybe
I want to be the guy. I'm going to make my pitch.
There you go. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's just
no, you're right. You're right.
These things, that's what's worrisome.
Yeah, no, and Briere's really sharp and everything like that, but he doesn't have the experience. I mean, you need
that's
something.
Correct.
I mean, there's no two ways about that. Like, I'm not doubting that he could be a part of.
No, I think over time he could be really good, but
part of a GM team. But I think that they have to look at this like a team, and they have to figure out a way. I think that's the way they're going to do it. I honestly really would not be shocked if we saw Brian Burke in Philadelphia. I think that is. I've talked to more about it. I don't have enough to go on it yet to write about it or to say like give it an E number, but B ranking or anything like that. But I'm just going to say that I haven't been shut down at all yet.
Okay.
And I thought I'd be shut down pretty quickly.
Right.
I usually am. That kind of thing is usually easy to shut a person. It's different when the player upper management is easy to shut you down.
Yeah.
All right. So by the way, just so those wise asses out there said I'm picking it so the Buzztron can be right. The Buzztron picked the Wild in 7.
Okay.
All right. So I'm also going with what the Buzztron said there. Actually, I went with Wild in 6, but yeah, and with the Wild in 6 for me is my prediction. But the Wild in 7 here. Yes, the Buzztron went with the Wild in 7, and
but that's the only pick you agreed on with the Buzztron. You said
went with Edmonton in 6. I agreed with that.
Okay. All right.
Actually, let's see, Boston in 6. I said Boston in 6. I agreed with that. And Carolina in 5. Actually, I picked exactly the same as the Buzztron.
So you did. All right. So there's no differences between you and
No, well, there are differences. The Buzztron's
just slight differences.
The Buzztron runs off of a TI-35 microchip. I'm a human man. But besides that, yeah, there are differences.
I mean, that's debatable, but okay.
That's the big difference. That's the biggest difference there. But if you want to see what the Buzztron's picks are throughout the rest of the playoffs and really make Mike happy, go to the Buzztron, Hockey Buzztron blog, which is up in the upper right corner.
I'll have something to say about that tomorrow.
You'll see who's supposed to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it'll be laced with expletives.
I know. I can't wait. And it's not believe me, I knew you'd be angry. It's just science, Mike.
It just shows that the Buzztron is made up of used pinball parts because
it's science, Mike.
It has no friggin' clue.
I went through today, by the way, to see the most predictable teams as the Buzztron, and
there's no room in Mike's life for science. That's what he's.
I know. The least predictable team, according to the Buzztron, so the one that got wrong the most this year, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that was interesting but that honestly is true when you think about the Leafs, who tend to play badly against bad teams, and that should make you happy, Mike. Because
listen, the Buzztron might as well work for Sportsnet. Only one person picked against the Leafs in all of Sportsnet.
Really?
Yes, Mike showed that tweet.
Oh, so Mike is going to be
the only one who picked against them.
And I revealed my pick, and we'll talk about that tomorrow because we want to have some drama.
Well, that's winning both ways, fans out there.
There you go.
All right, so we are only.
What did a Dartman pick?
2 hours and 17 minutes.
He's got emphysema.
We're 2 hours and 17 minutes from it all starting, and I have to say these 2 weeks are my favorite 2 weeks in the world. This is just this.
Yeah,
is the
first
best.
round's really, really exciting because sometimes the playoffs can get more predictable as they go on.
They do.
We expect more out of the first round in hockey.
First round is just, you finally see teams playing at the playoff level, which is something
we watch. You don't sleep much.
Right, you don't sleep much, and we watch so many games at one level, and you see immediately that other intensity.
Yeah.
You're sitting on the edge of your seat instead of just laying back and watching your iPad and watching the game at the same time. It's it gets in there. It gets you going. I think tonight's games, I do have a little bit of an issue with the scheduling, and I'll say one thing: scheduling. Why, tonight we have what 1, 2, 3 game in Minnesota and Dallas, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the other 3 are not, right? Yeah. So tomorrow nights are 2 versus 3 games tomorrow night. I think I'd rather have those are the tighter series games. I'd rather have them split up a little bit more. I'd rather have 2 versus 3 one night, 2, 3, just for the heck of it, because tomorrow night in the opening we're gonna have Boston and Toronto. I mean, you're gonna have Toronto and Tampa playing at the same time as the Devils and the Rangers. That's a tough one to be, and the same time as
that's one where you have to watch on 2 screens.
I've got my 2 screens all set up, but yeah. And tomorrow night, really interesting.
I'll be able to turn off the Leafs one after the second period. We'll see.
So and the Buzztron, I just can throw out their other picks for the opening round. I'll wait till tomorrow, but they're interesting. Check them out. You gotta check them out because there's some upsets. The Buzztron has some upsets coming in the first round for the rest of the series that we haven't seen. And did pick Minnesota, so we'll see. Remember, without the Buzztron or without the Buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy.
Maple Leaf Square.